Welcome everyone to the National Blitz Championships 2026. On the left of your screen is Karthikeyan Murali, one of India's amazing solvers, also a top GM, highest rating about 2650, has beaten Magnus Carlsen in classical chess. On the right of your screen is Abhimanyu Puranik, who is currently resting. You can't see him. He's leading the tournament with a score of 7.5 out of 8. Karthikeyan is on 7 out of 8. Let's see how this game goes. Pawn to e4 by Karthi, e5, knight to f3, knight comes out to c6. We have the Ruy Lopez, pawn to a6, bishop drops back to a4. Abhimanyu brings his knight out, attacking the pawn. White castles here. And now pawn to b5. The bishop drops back to b3. We have bishop to b7. The archangels might be in the position with bishop to c5 coming in. Karthikeyan is thinking what to do. He goes for the solid d3 line, and Abhimanyu also plays his bishop out to e7. Maybe slow and steady for white. c3, rook e1, a4, knight d2, knight f1, knight g3, h3. These are the kind of moves that come to mind in this structure. But Karthikeyan is thinking already, which is perhaps not the best sign, because this position is kind of well known. Should be something that he can play quickly so that he has time left later on for the complex position. He plays pawn to a3, and now Abhimanyu quickly castles here. The knight comes out to c3. Aha, so he's going for a different kind of a setup. Instead of this typical knight d2, pawn to c3 stuff, he's going and controlling the d5 square. Abhimanyu goes pawn to d6. And here the question. I think one idea is also you can go bishop g5 here and maybe chop off the knight and then take control of the d5 square. He goes knight e2. Aha. So instead of this knight d2, knight f1, knight g3, he's going from c3, e2 to g3. Okay, queen d7. Abhimanyu connects the rooks. Knight to g3, looking at the f5 square. Now maybe just pawn to g6. He goes knight d8. A very typical idea to bring the knight to e6. Rook e1, the knight jumps to e6. So while white knight looks on f5, black knight looks on f4, c3 played. And we have pawn to c5, grabbing some space in the center. White can really go for the move d4 now, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I think Karthikeyan just has to take care of his time. He plays d4, a good move. For Abhimanyu, there are many ways he can meet this. He takes pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, and now you can take on d4, but he goes knight takes, pawn takes, and just queen takes d4. And this is a very pleasant position for white. Abhimanyu has misplayed it. Rook e8, and now maybe something like bishop d2 to b4. The d6 pawn is a weakness. True that there is some pressure on the e4 pawn, but you can always play f3 and defend it. Black would be hoping to play a successful d5 at some point in this position to get rid of his weakness, but I doubt if that's going to be helpful. That's going to be possible. Bishop f4 played, a good move, putting pressure on the d6 pawn, and Abhimanyu goes bishop f8. The rook comes into the center. Now this is a weakness. Black would be even happy to give up that pawn, to be honest. It's really a weakness, and at the same time try to attack the e4 pawn. But what you have to be thinking as black is, what if white never takes this pawn and plays f3, slowly improves the position, and this pawn does remain weak. So I think a crunch moment for Abhimanyu, who has more time on the clock, but I think this is the time when he needs to invest it into trying to find what he will be doing. He goes queen c6. He creates a battery with his bishop and queen down the diagonal. for me it seems logical to play the move pawn to f3. Because look at this, if you take bishop d6, rook a d8 and you simply lose the game. So f3 played a very good move, and you can see Abhimanyu is going to create this craziness, and rook c1, what a beautiful move, because if you take pawn takes pawn, then rook takes rook, takes, and knight d5 should be fine. But with rook c1, he first attacks the queen, and you have to be careful because rook c7 is in the air. And now you can play e takes d5. Because that's a very strong move. E takes d5. Okay, you can be afraid of queen e1, rook e1, rook e1, but after king f2, the knight defends these squares. And then if you play something like rook e8, I can always go d6 and my d pawn is an absolute monster. Okay, one must agree that calculating e takes d5 and assessing it is no easy task. Which is the reason why here Karthikeyan has been thinking for over 30 seconds. He needs to make a decision. He goes rook c7 and loses a bulk of his advantage. But the question is now, do you defend the bishop? Rook c8, what a move. If you take here, then bishop c5 and you lose the queen. Incredible play here by Abhimanyu, and rook c1, Karthikeyan also finding the best move. This is turning into an amazing battle between these two great players. Rook takes rook played. And now, do you want to bring the other rook into the game as well? Abhimanyu, he's calculating. He has a minute on the clock. He plays rook c8, doesn't leave the rook. He's a bit confused. He plays it, rook c8. And now, of course, if you take the bishop, bishop c5. But there's a nice move, pawn takes pawn. And pawn takes pawn attacks the queen. Yes, he plays it. Knight takes d5 is not possible because of bishop takes, attacking the queen. And if you take with the bishop, here the rook on c8 would later be hanging. So that's the reason why queen e1 check is a must. 50 seconds. Oh, in fact, 36 seconds for Abhimanyu, 15 seconds for Karthi. Abhimanyu, look at the focus there. He's calculating it through. He's going to take the pawn or what? Oh my god. Was he just going to do bishop d5? Check. Good move. Knight f1. Blocking. Rook takes. Bishop takes. White is better. Pawn up. Okay, but time is going to be... Oh, Abhimanyu going below Karthi's time. Wow. And look at this. D pawn is very strong. And this bishop can open up. How does black create counterplay? 7 seconds. He goes knight e8. Maybe trying to stop the move d6 here. Bishop comes back. Knight to d6. And now maybe just queen e3. Trying to trade off the queens. But he goes g4. Bit too risky. Knight c4 takes. Pawn takes. And now if you take queen takes, then maybe queen d1 and the d pawn is a bit weak. And then the f3 pawn would be weak. So d6 played. Queen e2 attacking the f3 pawn. But now knight d2 and white is better. No, he goes queen f2. Queen d1 played. And now you need to make a move. King g2. And he plays h4. h6 played. And he loses on time. In a position that's equal. Karthikeyan Murali loses on time. That is just so sad. And look at them analyzing here. Let's hear them. What they have to analyze.